Hey guys, I don't really feel like making a video, but I'm gonna do it anyway. Sometimes reality just kind of sucks, but I'm gonna suck it up and do this video. So, time to turn this frown upside down! Paul McCartney's art. The first page of the book is just a simple yellow page that says, "This book is dedicated with love to my greatest supporter, Linda." I'm basically going to just talk about a few points that I found really interesting. I think it's interesting that Paul actually does paintings because a lot of times we see musicians, go into other forms of art and they aren't very successful at it. But Paul is actually a very good painter, in my opinion. I don't claim to know anything about art. I just like art, and I've tried to paint myself, and I'm horrible. But, in my opinion, I think Paul is pretty good, and I'm not saying that just because I like him, because lately, actually, I've been kind of annoyed with Paul, so there you go. Paul, from what I've read, has been influenced by a lot of people and a lot of things. For the Beatle who didn't go to art school, like John Lennon, he has actually been very artistic. And I'm not talking about just recently, but actually back when he was with the Beatles, he actually helped oversee the art for 3 album covers. Sgt. Pepper, as most of you know, the White Album, the simple minimalist White Album, and Abbey Road, which I did not know. This part I find especially interesting. Paul McCartney and Linda had a house together in East Hampton, which is on Long Island, for years. I believe her family still lives there. So every summer when they went out to their summer house, Paul would paint, and Paul actually became good friends with Willem de Kooning. A lot of Paul's paintings are abstract. There's a lot of portraits, but they're very loose interpretations of the person. He actually says that he likes loose painting. He doesn't like restriction. He goes with the flow. He explores the accident, which means I think that, he kind of does something and then stands back and kind of assesses where he could go with it. It looks like the paintings that I have in this book are from the 80s and early 90s, and I'm not sure if Paul still paints. I would hope he does, because he's actually really good. I think it's good to note that Paul isn't like one of those artists who go into a different art form and totally fail at it. Just to say Paul McCartney paintings brings up the Beatles in most people's minds. But that is why I didn't do it for so long. I have never wanted to do that because of the fact that I felt it would be depending on my celebrity and not on the pictures. Paul actually says, "I had a rational feeling, like some people would, for instance, think people like me don't ride horses or people like me don't swim. For me, it was that people like me don't paint." And I thought, well, why have I got this idea? And I realized that it was just conditioning through society, that if I didn't go to art school, I somehow thought that it was not right for me to paint. Personally, I think a person is an artist when they feel compelled to create. And it doesn't matter what form it takes, as long as they want to create something and put it in action. I think that that is an artist. That says nothing of the skill of the artist, but indeed I do think that even myself, I am an artist in some strange form or fashion. Paul describes his art as primitive because he never took any lessons or any art classes, nothing. Kind of like how he started out in music. My 2 favorite photos of the whole grouping. First is called "Is This a Self-Portrait?" and it was done in 1988. And if you look at it, it does kind of look like Paul, but it also kind of looks like John Lennon. I think my favorite, for some weird reason, is John's room done in 1990. He said, "I was going to make another character there. The first sketch was done in the blue to get composition, but as I started to fill in a little bit, I got a very strong feeling that that was John Lennon's face, the one with the face on the clothes sitting down. It had a look that was John Lennon. Just in a moment, it reminded me. It may not remind anyone else of John Lennon, but for me, it reminded me of him. I then had an idea for his clothes. Instead of material in the medieval tradition, I made his clothes, his toga, into one of his faces. When John used to draw, that would be a typical face on the right profile." Later in the interview, he kind of says something kind of striking. "It was now John, so now the picture centered on him. So instead of the yellow person becoming central, it suddenly all seemed to me that everyone was now focusing on this John Lennon figure. And obviously, as John is a very strong, important person in my life, I always enjoy getting an image of him. It's like if you dream of someone, if you dream of your father and he is dead, in your dream you meet him again, and if it is a good dream, it is a wonderful moment because for 2 seconds you are with him again and you don't think, oh, he's dead, I can't enjoy this moment. You accept it. So in painting, this sometimes happens to me, and this was a bit like that, meeting John again, drawing his face. It was great." It's really very interesting if you are into art yourself or want to know more about Paul's art. It's kind of inspired me to get back into painting. I haven't done it in a while. This is the only one that I feel comfortable showing because it's not made of total fail. It's obviously the Eiffel Tower. I have to explain it because I've never been to Paris in my life. So I wouldn't know how this goes, but I had this really vivid dream where I was sitting outside in Paris, the sun was setting and the Eiffel Tower was there, and it was just so breathtakingly beautiful that I started crying in the dream. I think it was the second in a sequence of dreams like that. Really weird. I hope to see you guys next week. Adios.